So welcome everyone to the Co-Creators Convergence Day as part of World Unity Week. I'm now joined by my dear friend, Mark Porteous. Yes, we met him on our Birth 2012 tour around the 48 states, found him in Florida. He's another beautiful student of Barbara Marx Hubbard. He's gone on to do so many fabulous things. And you can find more about him at markporteous.com. Also in the chat and on the Zoom link, we're going to put more information about Mark and Clayton. And also when we post this live conversation on the Co-Creators Convergence website, we will have full description and details on how you can connect further with them, because I know you'll want to. So with that, dear Mark, I am going to hide my video. I'm going to listen in and welcome Clayton and allow you to conduct this next 45 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noelle. Thank you also, Bob and Kathy. I appreciate all the work that you're doing to put this stage together as part of World Unity Week. And you brought up Barbara Marx Hubbard and Birth 2012. And I can't help but during this time thinking about all the seeds that were planted back during that tour of yours, and all of the activism that you've done and all of the personal growth that we've each had in that process, and the people that we've met along the journey. And I'm so grateful to be part of this stage and to be able to bring some of those people on to this event who are also out there creating movements and helping people to build movements. So it's a really great privilege to share stage with people like Jean Houston and Marianne Williamson, who have been leaders in the industry for a long time, and I've been my mentors. And now to have people like Clayton Ferrara, who I'm bringing on here now, who's also been in this world doing amazing, wonderful things for many years. And I'll jump right in because, again, his information is up there. I'll just say that I met Clayton at the Orlando City Summit. We shared the stage together there. And when he shared all of the things that he was up to and all of the things that they had already accomplished with Ideas for Us, I just knew that we had a lot in common, a lot to share. And to see how many nonprofits, how many movements he's already started, I knew it was a perfect fit to share with you. So I'm going to back off. I'm going to let Clayton take the mic and let him share what he's brought into the role with Ideas for Us and how he can help people that are listening today to move their movement forward and to actually create momentum. Clayton, are you there?
I am, Mark. How are you?
I am wonderful. It's good to see you, brother.
Great. It's wonderful to see you too. And just so I know, I've got about 15 minutes, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
All right. Well, then let's pedal to the metal here. So it's an honor to be here and to share a little bit about who I am and what I do. You know, I always believe that being part of social and environmental movements is tremendously important, but I had no idea heading into 2020 just how important this work would become. I think that as our last speaker so eloquently put it, is that, you know, there is a lot of very, very dire things going on in the world right now. But the nice thing is that many injustices, whether they're health disparity, whether they're civil rights resurgence, is getting more attention than ever before. So for me, I think to myself, what is the best way to catalyze this action so that it doesn't fizzle out and it remains something that can cause very specific and purposeful, meaningful change? Policies, ordinances, laws. These are the kinds of metrics that we need in social movements, because without them, we find ourselves spinning our wheels very often for decades. So I'm Clayton Lewis Ferrara. I'm an evolutionary biologist. I'm a global nonprofit expert, and I've had the wonderful privilege of being part of movements that deal with conservation and the environment since being very young. You know, elementary school, I started running some of my first collections of change at lunchtime to donate to nonprofit sea turtle hospitals and things like that, where I was growing up in South Florida. And really, as I stepped into my teenage years, began shadowing and studying with nonprofit leaders from all around the world. Learning the perspective as a volunteer, as an executive director, as a board member, as a staff member. And today I'm CEO of a United Nations NGO called Ideas for Us. And we work on environmental and sustainability issues around the world, focused on solutions. But what I want to talk about today is the power of 501c3 nonprofits. As I've been fortunate to be part of these different movements going on, I've also become very good at starting movements on behalf of other people and their passions. So I'm CEO of a company called Protege, and what we do is set up 501c3 nonprofits and foundations, both public and private charities for people. To date, I have set up now 48 nonprofits, and I have some of the fastest turnaround time of these documents of usually 6 weeks, which is wonderful. I remember back in 2011, when the process of setting up a 501c3 was a little different. It wasn't uncommon to wait 6 months in order to get your status. So I'm happy to say that we're really expediting these kinds of things for our clients and the people we're trying to help. So let me start by talking a little bit about why a 501c3 is so important for catalyzing a lot of this action. For starters, 501c3 nonprofits is essentially a tax status. It is no different than a corporation that exists for a for-profit company. The main difference, however, is that with a nonprofit, you are essentially looking at a supremely democratic entity. It's run by a board of directors that's all volunteer. None of them can be paid. Instead of having the profits go to the head shareholders, it goes to be recycled back into the mission. No one can own a 501c3 nonprofit. And due to these different stipulations that have been put on by the Tax Act of 1969, what has essentially come about is a entity that is extraordinary at achieving goals and at driving impact. I think more so than loosely organized movements. Now, nonprofits are not the end-all be-all for creating change. It takes a lot of players in the grassroots movement. But when nonprofits as a incorporated entity with the rights that a company is given here in the United States, with its ability to mobilize volunteers and mobilize capital from foundations and businesses, it really has an incredible opportunity to change the game. I also think that there's a lot of wonderful benefits that come from people deciding to not sit on the sidelines. I think that we have an extraordinary opportunity to use our lives for good. And when we look at the benefits that come from that, people who are part of groups and movements live longer. They have less stress in their lives. They have a lower level of disease. These are very, very important aspects of why I think everyone should get involved in some way with a nonprofit organization or social movement. So very, very important keys there. Also, when we look at the role that nonprofits have played historically in our country, many laws that have to do with public safety and public health have come about through nonprofit campaigns. Many drugs and different kinds of treatments for combating diseases have been spawned by leveraging the capital that nonprofits can command. And really, it comes down to the fact that as a 501c3 nonprofit, you can accept donations from foundations, you can accept donations from an individual, and those are a tax write-off, right? So this is very important because if you're a foundation that has a significant amount of money and you are investing that money, as foundations do, the interest that you're making off of that money is what you're giving out each year so that you're not decreasing the principal that's sitting in the bank account. Well, technically that interest would be considered capital gains, and you would pay a very heavy tax burden on that. So how does one escape that tax burden? Well, it's through the donation of that money to 501c3 nonprofits, and it functions essentially as a tax write-off. So this is an extraordinary way of mobilizing capital in perpetuity to power some of the most important movements that we have across the board. whether it's things like, again, environmental movements, health and social justice and civil rights related things, all the way through to companies that you may not know are nonprofits. For instance, most academic institutions are 501c3 nonprofits. Most, that goes for colleges, that also goes for a lot of private schools. Not all of them, because many private schools are structured as for-profit entities to be able to take capital investments from venture capitalists. It's a little different with a nonprofit because no one owns it, right? It's governed by a volunteer board of directors. They have the liability, but no one essentially owns a nonprofit except for the American public. So, it's a very, very, very powerful tool for being able to leverage different kinds of solutions. Now, another aspect that I think is really neat for a nonprofit is the different strategies that they can use to bring in funding. So at Ideas for Us, we have about 12 revenue models for being able to bring in funding for the organization. This goes far beyond the tin cup approach, as I like to say, of the nonprofit being stuck as a professional beggar. I'm really specialized in creating social enterprises that have high cash revenue models to be able to drive these kinds of changes that are needed. Being able to support a full-time staff, right? We have 15 people on full-time payroll at Ideas for Us. And we started in a dorm room in 2008, right? 5 people sitting around deciding that we wanted to change the world. And, I mention this because I want a nonprofit to be something that captures your imagination and is something that helps you to stretch bigger and greater in what you can do with your own life and the lives that you can change for people. Because there's a lot of opportunity out there. Florida Blue, for instance, the insurance company, they're a 501c3 nonprofit. Until very recently, the NFL was a 501c3 nonprofit. Most hospitals are 501c3 nonprofits. So it's perfectly fine to have a revenue model. It's perfectly fine to pay your staff very well. And in fact, you should. And I'm a advocate of paying staff in nonprofit work above fair market rate, because if not, then you lose this extraordinary talent to the private sector or to the public sector, either in government or in private business. Well, the nonprofit sector is actually the independent sector. It exists between the two to leverage resources that the other two sectors have access to so that you can solve problems that they cannot or will not solve. And that's really this magic of these 3 civic social circles that exist: the public sector, the independent sector, and the private sector. And it's very unique because in other countries, you have a lot of state-owned entities. You have a lot of corporations that are not into solving these kinds of problems, whether they're education or health related. So we're in a very unique spot here in the United States, and I'm happy to say that we've really set the pace of the world as far as how nonprofits are looked at. Now, one of the cool things is that once you have a nonprofit organization, you can work to expand your reach. And one of the things that we did in 2012 with Ideas for Us is we became accredited by the United Nations. And then we were so active between 2012 and 2014 that we were given a higher level of consultative status, something called special consultative status. And now I'm a delegate for the United Nations, and we're an observer organization, meaning that we're able to get into closed room meetings and actually function as a whistleblower across a multitude of different things going on at international, meetings and things like that, particularly around climate change. So looking at policy and ordinance around those types of things and leveraging some of the work that we've done as an organization in Orlando, where I live in Central Florida, and being able to copy some of the policies and ordinances that we've launched here to great success. Great success of opening economic development, great success in putting more kilowatts of solar in the community, being able to benchmark buildings and cut down on the tremendous amount of carbon emissions that our electrical grid is doing. And through a recent 2018 survey, I guess, study that was done by Department of Energy, Orlando was named the #1 most sustainable city in the Southeast, directly from the policies that we were able to pass through grassroots efforts. So proof is in the pudding. I'm, again, very excited to be here today. I know I had only 15 minutes, so I wanted to make this kind of quick to give a little bit of an overview here. But really the punchline is that, we're all being called to decide what role we want to play in 2020 in the future. And if anyone is interested in exploring getting involved with nonprofit organizations or starting their own nonprofit organization, that's something that I'm here to help with as a resource. And again, I'm about to set up my 50th organization, hopefully by the end of July. And that's a big deal. When I started doing this at 19, I set up my first nonprofit organization, and I would have never imagined now, fast forwarding through time here, I'm no longer 19, having set up quite a few different organizations. So Mark, you and the team, here, you're always, such a whiz at setting up just the most amazing meetings with great people who are trying to change the world in their own way. And I'm happy, to call you a friend. I'm happy to help, any people here at all. This is a service that I charge for, but I'm more than happy to verbally, give some advice and always point someone in the right direction, because I want to see people succeed. And I know that I've had so much joy, amazing friendships, traveling all over the world. I've done scientific research on 5 continents, now, all through nonprofit work. And I know that that's the kind of life that many others are looking to live, and I want to help them do that. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here as always.
Thank you so much, Clayton. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Again, we do have your information. The name of the group, again, is Ideas for Us, and it's ideasforus.org. I'm reminding, yes. And again, you'll have your information on Facebook. We really, really appreciate everything that you're doing, and look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Can I
Mark.
comment before you leave, Clay?
Yes.
I went to your website. It's amazing, all the things you've done.
Oh, thank you.
This organization, this whole thing that we're doing is very closely associated with the UN. And I see your work is guided towards the SDGs, development goals. And so Mark said he was going to bring you in. I just want people to know what this close tie is, that, we have other people here who are, are also part of the NGOs and part of, and this is also this week, we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. And then we're going to have Peace Week, September 21st. We're going to have Peace Weekend, which it was declared by the United Nations. So I expect to see y'all back here then.
Absolutely. Let me just say, if I may, just one quick thing on the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a very important decade. 2030 has been listed as the deadline, essentially, by a consensus of scientists from many, many, many countries, that if we don't turn the ship around as far as some of our biggest global problems, poverty, lack of education, lack of access to health care, climate change, it's going to be very, very hard for us to keep up this quality of life for the almost 8 billion people that we have on the planet. So this is being called the decade of action between 2020 and 2030 for people to have an unprecedented response to these particular problems that are going on. And I just invite everyone here, where if you've been sitting on the sidelines, if you maybe haven't been playing it, as big as you've wanted to, the world needs you. And, you have a role to play and lives to change, including your own, through this journey. So I just invite everyone to find what it is that they truly care about, and to focus on how can they make the world a better place through doing that.
Thank you. And Mark, before I turn it back over to you, I just want to let you know that we do have a little bit of stretch time. So, Clay wants us to stick around, but
if there's any questions, or I can, of course, just keep rambling.
And if
I'm
you're
going to turn it back over to Mark.
I was going to say, if you're in the chat box too, if people have questions, are you able to see the chat there as well, Clayton?
I am, yes.
There's a couple of comments on there, but so yes, if people want to reach out there, I'm going to be bringing out our next guest, Iman and Afrin, and I feel like you did such a great job of segue around, you know, whatever it is, find out what it is that you're here for, and then take action, because you gave some really specific steps around creating a structure that supports taking action. Now with Iman and Afrin, we're going to be talking about kind of the phases of creating a movement, and some of the structures that lead into, whether it's creating a nonprofit or whatever else those next steps would be. So I appreciate you kind of setting the stage. And again, if you want to stick around, if there's questions, whatever, I would love that. And perhaps we can bring you back on. Right now, I've got to set aside another 20 minutes, but if we have playroom after that, they have about 25 minutes worth of really good content with really specific actionable steps that people can take, and a great little freebie thing that people can download if they want to take some other action. So if that's good with you and you feel complete here, I would love to bring in Afrin and Iman. Is that good with you, Clayton? And is that good with you, Noelle, the wonderful host of this whole event?
Bring it on. Perfect.
Wonderful. Iman, Afrin, are you guys there?
Yeah. We are.
It's speaker view, so as soon as your voices, now I can see your beautiful faces. Thank you both for being here. Iman and Afrin are not only dear friends, they're mentors. I joined their organization, the Red Elephant Herd and Impact Tribe, back in 2016, just a month before my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I joined their group to help me to make a movement. And they really held my family together and helped me to learn one of the most valuable pieces of being a leader out here in the spiritual world, which is about integrating your family and your mission and the work that you're doing. So I really appreciate you for doing that, and the work that you've done in the world for helping make movements. And I'm really excited for you to share your process. So I'm going to just hand it over to you. And again, all of your information is going to be here in the chat room so people can connect with you, and on Facebook, but I'll let you share your story from here.
Great. Thank you, Mark, for that introduction. Thank you, Noelle, Bob, and Kathy, for hosting this extraordinary event. Clayton, thank you for setting us up so wonderfully. That was not planned or prepared, but we'll take it. And that's Mark's brilliance in terms of creating a platform for United Leaders to come together. If you're watching this on Facebook Live, I just want you to know, if you haven't met us before, my name is Afrin.
I'm Iman.
And we are going to be sharing some content about how to create a movement. And the way that we teach is very experiential. So I want you to engage in the comments. Go ahead and let's celebrate right now. I love the theme of this event, which is celebrating unity. If you can drop an emoji that represents celebration, it could be a heart emoji, prayer hands. I know there's a confetti emoji. You put a celebration in there that represents you being a part of this conversation. We are all co-creating and converging together right now. There are going to be times where we need to listen and lean in. There are going to be times where we need to lead, and it doesn't matter what role you're in. As Clayton says, everybody has a role. So go ahead and also put in hashtag CCC to represent co-create convergence. So we know we're all on the same page together. Mark, we're honored to be here.
Thank you so much. And again, I'm really grateful to call you friends and colleagues and partners. And again, this session is all about creating a movement. And the way that you are so great at doing that is through creating engagement and connection. So the idea of bringing people into the chat room and creating that conversation and the hashtag, that's all part of the way that you create community and create herd and make a movement. So I just want people to really observe the way that you lead through these calls. And I'll turn it over to you again to just dive right in.
Sure, thank you. Well, the question that we're exploring right now is what is needed to mobilize a world unity movement? What is needed to mobilize a world unity movement? And there are some key words in there. There are the words mobilize, the word world, and the world movement. And if you think about it, which I appreciate, again, the organizers for posing this question, because it allows us to do some deep reflection and inner work, which is really required for us to accomplish mobilizing world unity. And we really want to create ways in which you can be navigated through the process of doing this inner work, because to mobilize the world, it can feel sometimes overwhelming. It can feel sometimes that there may be resignation, that we've tried this once before. Why are we still back here? Think about the times when you were taking a stand, or you are taking a stand for your ideas, your solutions, and you hit some type of roadblock and you need to take a detour. Anyone else experienced that before? Well, how do you own where you are in the journey of your movement? And how do you lead others while you're on this journey? Iman and I have created a system that helps leaders navigate how you can move through phases of a movement, especially when you're leading through crisis. I think that is a really important conversation as leaders. So I'm going to turn it over to Iman to share about our phases of how to lead during any setback and how to lead a movement.
Thank you. Mark, if we could, I don't think we can share our screen yet. So if you could enable that while.
Yep, and Bob should be doing that. I don't know if I can actually make you co-host. Let me see if I can.
Okay.
As we're doing that, I'll say that we've shared this framework with hundreds and thousands of people that have come back to us and said that this gives real clarity. So the intention of us sharing this framework with you is so that you have clarity. Clarity breeds confidence and the ability to take inspired action. So that's our intention for this segment of our talk.
And I'll just start describing the framework that Afrin's talking about. So we developed something. Afrin and I are both kind of natural born hackers. So anytime there's a problem or a challenge, we kind of just love to hack it and take it apart. And one of the things we've been working on is really supporting leaders in how to navigate setbacks. There's so many people who are natural leaders. They want to step forward and really enable people to keep standing for what it is they believe in and keep moving their movements forward while being able to successfully navigate those setbacks. And one of the graphics that we'll share with you in a minute that we developed is just that. It's called How Leaders Navigate Setbacks, and the different phases that people traverse during any given setback. And I think we can share it with you now. So I'm just going to do that really quick. So most people, when dealing with any given setback, whether it's something trivial or whether it's something major, kind of like we've been dealing with in society, first with the coronavirus and now with everything happening around the social unrest, most people enter the phase of avoid or acceptance before they go through the rest of what you're seeing here. So either people, and it's great because Afrin and I fall into both of those categories. I'm someone who typically likes to avoid a setback. When a setback sets in, I'm someone who I have to defend my position about why it's not happening. I don't really believe that it's happening. I look at why it's happening or who is there to blame, or I kind of just get into my own little kind of denial process about it. Afrin works much differently. Afrin instantly accepts that this is what's happening. She begins to question everything and rationalize different action plans. Now, the thing is, most people that enter at the avoid stage of dealing with a setback at some point move into accepting it. Once you've accepted it, you can move forward into the assess part or the assess phase of the setback. And in the assess phase, what most people tend to do is they really begin to buckle down, they regroup and adjust and start to respond to whatever the setback is. They start taking certain actions that help them stabilize whatever the situation means for them. Once they've sort of been through the assessment phase, they move into pivoting. So this is where they actually start to formulate a game plan. It looks like the setback's here to stay for at least a minute or enough time where they have to now organize themselves differently to deal with the setback. This is a time of incredible chaos and incredible conflict. So what people do in response to that chaos and that conflict is that they begin to organize. Many of you may have noticed during shelter in place for the coronavirus, you started to clean your closets or your garages. It's a function of being in this pivot phase where I feel like I have to really dig in and start getting my life organized to deal with the inherent conflict and chaos that's happening all around us. We also begin to formulate different plans and strategies for how to move forward given the new set of circumstances that the setback brings forth. And then finally, in the final phase of how to deal with a setback, you'll see we call it evolve. And in the evolve phase, there's a number of ways in which people participate, but here's really where they start to demonstrate their resiliency and they start to contribute to others, and their leadership really starts to emerge. Now, a couple of things I just want to point out about these different phases. So the first thing is they're not always linear. Most people will move through in this process, but you may wake up one day really finding yourself in assess, and then the next day you're in pivot, and then the next day you're back in avoid. You can kind of be all over this map depending on where you are emotionally that day and how you're feeling. The other thing is,
well, there's different triggers that happen
yeah, there's
throughout the
definitely
day,
different triggers.
and the triggers can help you either evolve forward or help you fall back.
Absolutely. And when you're in any one phase, the best thing is to just be there. I know a lot of times we want to fix it and move forward and get to evolve or get to pivot, but different people, based on whatever backgrounds they come from and whatever understandings they have of a situation, they will spend different amounts of time in these different phases. I don't spend very much time in avoid. I mean, I spend about a minute there and then I quickly move into accept, but you'll find other people spend a lot of time in avoid. Some people get really paralyzed in accept. Once they've accepted what's happened, they'll spend a lot of time there because they have such a difficult emotional time dealing with this is my new reality. So there's no right amount of time to spend in any one of these phases. And as you interact with others while you're developing your own movement, it can often feel like you're getting impatient or you want people to just come along. But the best thing to do for people is to really let them be where they are. If you just grant people being and let them be wherever they are about whatever they're going through regarding a setback, it actually can empower them to move through that space a lot quicker. Now, I will say one thing that's usually, Afrin just mentioned triggers, there's usually a trigger that forces people out of one phase and into another. So you'll see the little black arrows on the graphic. Usually what happens when I'm in a void is something else will happen to move me into accept, like shelter in place. You know, when the coronavirus was first announced, we even had a retreat plan. I still wanted to go on the retreat. It wasn't until shelter in place was announced that I finally moved into accepting that this is what's happening. And then from accept, usually there needs to be some sort of public consensus, either in your community or the world at large, that this is real, this is really what's happening. And that consensus is what usually brings people into assessing. From assess, as people begin to respond, you know, one of the things we did when we were buckling down is we went to 5 different grocery stores that day, got as much toilet paper, meat, batteries, everything we could do in part of our buckling down process. That type of action leads you to the next place, which is pivot, because once you've got your foundation set up, now you can actually start to deal with digging in and formulating a game plan. From there, the only thing that we've really seen so far, and this is a work in progress, that takes people from pivoting into an evolution is the community at large. Once I've got myself set up, I've got myself dealing with my new reality and what it's going to take for me, my wife, my kid. Now I can start looking at what does my community need. And when you get into the concerns of the community, that's usually when there's an evolution into the setback and then also through and out of the setback. So these are the different phases that we've kind of distinguished that people are going through. We developed this in response to the coronavirus, but with the number of people we've shared this with so far, we've just heard that it really is applicable to any setback people are dealing with, and people are utilizing it for all sorts of reasons and all sorts of things that they deal with in their life. So
and how this applies to World Unity Week is that we really think that everybody here has a commitment to provide leadership. And we again, all have a role here. And we use the example of coronavirus because it impacted all of us across the board. So you can see all of these different phases, but think about for yourself after you leave this session, think about as it relates to the movement around peace, as it relates to a world movement that you're taking on, that you're contributing to, on any given day, you could wake up in one of these phases.
Yeah.
And being aware of the phase that you're in and owning it, being present to it, can give you some type of clarity to give you also what the next steps are, which is usually what people ask. Okay, I'm here, now what?
Yeah.
What's my next step?
And I would say the real key to interacting with this graphic is just understanding that no one of these phases is right or wrong. It's just where people are. And if you can give yourself the room to be in any of these phases, you can also give other people the room to be in any of these phases. Often, you know, my humanness, when I'm in the evolve phase, I find myself having less patience for people in the avoid phase. And that's the time to have the most patience for people in the avoid phase so that everybody can move forward and everybody can also have the freedom to be.
I am so excited about the graphic, and thank you for sharing this tool. I remember when Bob and Noelle first told me about this event and about making movement, you know, you guys came right to my mind. I knew about the stages of the movement, and for everybody to understand, one, to own wherever they are is very, very powerful. And then to be able to know that it's okay and to be happy with or understand that wherever they are is fine. But one of the things is that you guys always come and over deliver. So when I said, you know, can you have a tool? You actually have an even bigger tool than what you just shared, you know, as information. So I want to let you do that. I also want to encourage engagement. If people have questions, I know you guys said you can stick around for a while. Noelle said we may even have a little bit of cushion here to go into Q&A or anything else. So if people do have questions, or if you want to encourage anybody to engage in the chat, I would love that. And then if you want to share the extra gift that you came with.
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the tools that we're going to give you is around how to create a movement. And we're going to show this slide, this visual, to set you up for our free gift for everybody. Because one of the questions that a lot of people ask us is, how come some movements are viral and some movements are slow moving?
Yeah.
And how come some movements, they start off really strong, you have momentum, and then it feels like the rudder went out of that boat and you're rowing and it's taking a long time. If you've been in any of these situations, again, we love creating frameworks. We think that empowering and equipping leaders to navigate how to manage an idea diffusing into the marketplace, diffusing into your families, your neighborhoods, your communities, and the world, you'll need to understand one of these conversations that we're borrowing from the diffusion of innovations from Everett Rogers. He uses this in a business setting on how to diffuse innovative ideas. So this may be familiar to you. I'm a marketing nerd. I majored in marketing in business. And I had this aha where we can apply the diffusion of innovation that was set up for a business setting and also apply it to people who are looking to create a world global movement like we are doing right here today. So if you can, I'm just going to go through this really quickly and leave this up here for a moment, that really what happens when you are sparking a movement, when you have an idea, that you are a disruptor. That is the first phase of how you want to own the first group of people, including yourself. You're the innovators, you're somebody who wants change, and that can feel really quick. You get 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, 100 people together who are on the same page as you. When you start speaking, you start doing different events and marketing your idea for what your stand is and how you see you want to change the world, you start to see there's going to be people who start following you. They're called the early adopters, or we name them inside of a movement, the advocates. These are people who are saying, okay, I'm not a leader of this movement, but I endorse, I believe in this movement. I'm going to
promote it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll promote it to other people along the curve. The next group of people, and this group is really important to understand, they're called change agents and the early majority. And they're 34% of the population, who are people who previously were probably skeptical about your movement. They weren't sure, or they weren't even aware that you had a movement. And the change agents are the ones that are starting to hear the benefits of what your movement is. And you really want to spend time in nurturing your change agents, educating your change agents, and connecting with your change agents as well. They will really help you close the gap so that you can have the type of movement and diffuse your idea so that it becomes viral. What I also want to draw attention to is there's two other groups called traditionalists, which is the late majority, the skeptics and the laggards. These are people who really aren't interested in change at all. And I think that it's important to know that there are people in our communities, our society, even our families that are not going to be on board for our movement. And that's okay. That's okay. Here's why. It really takes being able to work with the change agents, advocates, and disruptors to create a tipping point for your movement to impact everybody.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers, the 2.5% plus 13.5 plus 34, that actually equals 50%. Now, chances are you're not going to get all of the change agents to buy into your movement. So you'll need some of the traditionalists to come across, but you only need a very small percentage of the traditionalists to come into the movement for the movement to reach a tipping point. And once the tipping point is reached, the movement just gets realized and takes on a new life form. The one thing I want you to notice is that you don't actually need the skeptics. So trying to spend your energy talking to, convincing, debating, you don't actually need them.
It's a distraction. It's a distraction. So stay focused, stay the course with working with the disruptors, advocates, and change agents. That is who we're with today. That is what the organizers, Noelle, Bob, and Kathy have created, is this group of people who want change. We're permitting disruption. And if you had an aha about this, put this in the chat room. Let us know that you're seeing some type of clarity about what you can now do and where you can focus your energy. Usually at this point, people are asking us, all right, what's the next step? What do I do? Where do I start? I am committed to moving forward and diffusing my idea. So we created a very simple, we love acronyms. We created a really simple acronym for you to take the next step. So why don't you walk us through this?
So in order to take the next step, there's a couple of things you have to do. So the first thing is you have to schedule everything. There is no taking a next step if it's not in your schedule. We're all really well-intentioned. We all want to do that thing we're passionate about. And our recommendation is if it's not in your calendar, probably you're not going to do it, or you're not going to do it in any consistent, ongoing, sustainable format. So get it scheduled. Even if you're going to spend an hour a week on it, if it's in your schedule and you're someone who listens to what you put in your schedule, you will do it. And then taking a stand is all about voicing and giving life to what it is that you believe in. You've got to speak up, and you've got to keep speaking up and be willing to speak up regardless of what circumstances life or society or the community you're speaking up in is throwing at you. Then we want you to empower others. So there's two groups of people we're referring to when we say empower others. You've got to first empower the people who are your advocates and your change agents. You've got to train them, you've got to lead them, you got to give them resources to be able to move your message forward. Then you've got to also make sure that the work you're doing is empowering the group that you're targeting to benefit from your movement. So if you keep taking action for a certain group to be receiving the benefits from, and they're not receiving the benefits, then they're going to lose interest. And mostly that group of people can fall into the change agents and traditionalist category. And you need both of those people to move the movement forward. The P really stands for partnerships. You want to get into strategic partnerships with people of influence. You want to have people who have their finger on the heartbeat of a community advocate for you, because with one Instagram post or one Facebook post, their influence is so wide reaching that literally they can bring in thousands of people to your movement. And you might be saying, I don't know someone with that kind of influence. That's fine. Start where you are. You can build to getting that kind of influence. Start with someone who knows everyone in the local community. Have them introduce you to the next person, but you want to build strategic partnerships. Kind of like for those of you in business, it's kind of like doing an affiliate launch. In the beginning, you start small, and then as you do more and more launches, bigger and bigger names will be drawn in to promote whatever it is that you're moving. And then finally, the S is stay the course. We can't stress this enough. Movements get realized when people don't quit. There's so much that has you want to quit, but when you don't quit is when the movement gets realized. If you stay the course, people will see that in the face of whatever circumstances were thrown at you, you stayed and you stood and you took a stand and you said everything there was to say and you didn't give up. And that in and of itself can drive participation.
And if you're interested in continuing this dialogue in a way where you get the tools and the frameworks and the know-how to create your movement, we are gifting everybody that is participating in this event with our Create Your Movement course. It is a downloadable course where it's on demand. It is something that you can get at your fingertips on your computer, and you can watch the different modules that we've created that really walks you through how to create a movement. Mark, if you can drop it into the chat room, it's already done. Love it. Yeah, this is partnership in action. It's one of our favorite courses to teach.
And we'll include these slides and these graphics for you if you do decide to download the course. We'll throw these in there so that you have these to refer back to, and you can utilize these for however you want to utilize them. And really that course, it's completely do it yourself. No one's going to grade you. No one's going to time you. You download it and you use it as you see fit. The course, we do house our courses in Kajabi. So if you do choose to download the course, you'll get an invitation from Kajabi to go in there and start being able to get all the materials.
And just to let you know, it is a pass-fail course. When you get invited to your movement, then you passed.
That's great.
Thank you guys so much. Again, I love the clarity. I do believe that you two are the king and the queen of transformational content. Again, I really believe that was really, really powerful and clear and easy. And thank you so much for your generosity.
Thank you for having us. We're just so thrilled to be here and thrilled that you invited us and Noel.
I love that I get to connect you to my dear friends, Noel and Bob. And Noel is back here on the screen.
Yes, I am. And let me see if I can get this off of speaker view here. And okay, I'm going to go to mine. I don't know why that's not happening, but I'm going to.
You're pulling that up. I just want to say thank you again, Noel, and thank you, Bob, for all your work behind the scenes there. I know that you're quite busy. I just have been amazed by all the work that you've done over the last 8 years that I know you, and to be able to see you continue to grow is absolutely fabulous. So thank you. And thank you also, Reverend Marcia. I loved your sharing. The importance of fun in all of this urgency is really, really critical.
It's really amazing. So I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you. I think we have the links and everything, redelephantink.com, and also Clayton's was ideasforus.org. What an amazing gentleman. And of course, Mark Porteous, and he also has the Inspired Messengers Network. So thank you all for coming today. And I really appreciate what you contributed and continue to contribute to this World Unity Week and the Co-Creators Convergence. Thank you, everyone.